The committee will come to order. Today we're considering three nominations. Henry Coker to serve as the National Cyber Director, Jeff Resmovic to serve as the Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Homeland Security, and Suzanne Summerlin to be the General Counsel for the Federal Labor Relations Authority. Welcome to each of our nominees and to your friends and family members who I know are joining you today. It's good to see smiling faces behind you as well. Congratulations and thank you for your willingness to continue to serve the public as well as your prior public service to what is truly, with all three of these positions, very important positions for the federal government. Mr. Coker, if confirmed, you will play a key role in the strengthening of our nation's cyber security. This committee worked to establish the Office of the National Cyber Director to develop and to coordinate a comprehensive whole-of-government approach to cybersecurity. And since the office was formed in 2021, I have been pleased to work with former Director Chris Inglis and Acting Director Kemba Walden on their efforts to stand up the new office and develop the first ever national cybersecurity strategy and the first ever national cyber workforce and education strategy. The next cyber director will be instrumental in driving the implementation of these strategies. The National Cyber Director must be able to foster collaboration and cooperation across the government with partners in both the private and the public sectors. Our country faces significant cyber threats, including from foreign agents, cyber criminals, and so-called hacktivist groups. And in order to protect our economy and critical infrastructure from these evolving threats, we must take a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity. Mr. Coker, I look forward to hearing about your plans to lead the office and build upon the progress that has already been made by this young agency. Mr. Resmovic, if confirmed, you will oversee the budget and financial operations for one of the largest and most complex federal agencies, the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS as we refer to it around here, and you do. Has an annual budget of over $60 billion that supports the work of over 250,000 employees that keep our nation safe each and every day. The CFO for the department plays a key role in ensuring that DHS is using the resources both effectively and responsibly. It is vitally important that the CFO understands the complexities of the DHS and its components and is committed to working with Congress in an open and transparent manner. Mr. Resmovic, I look forward to hearing more about your background and your approach to the CFO role. Ms. Summerlin, I'm very glad that we are considering your nomination to the FLRA General Counsel today. The FLRA has not had a Senate-confirmed General Counsel for nearly 7 years, since January of 2017. This prolonged vacancy has been detrimental to the agency and its work enforcing labor relations laws. The FLRA's General Counsel is responsible for investigating and prosecuting unfair labor practice cases, ensuring both federal employees and agency management are treated fairly and in accordance with federal labor relations laws. The FLRA General Counsel must be able to impartially evaluate cases and effectively manage a small but very dedicated team of attorneys and staff in offices across our country. Ms. Summerlin, I look forward to hearing more about your experience and the plans for that role. Welcome again to all three of you. The committee has heard from a wide range of individuals and organizations in support of each of your nominations, and today's hearing is an important opportunity for us to hear directly from you about your qualifications and your plans for taking on very challenging roles. It is the practice of this committee to swear in witnesses, so if each of you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony that you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. You may be seated. Thank you. Harry Coker has dedicated his career to defense and national security. He most recently served as Executive Director of the National Security Agency, directly supporting the Director and Deputy Director as the organization's third in command. He was awarded the National Intelligence Distinguished Service Medal for his work. Prior to his time at NSA, Mr. Coker served at the Central Intelligence Agency for 17 years. He's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, the Naval Postgraduate School, and Georgetown University Law School, and is a career naval officer. I'm always glad to welcome a Navy man to this committee. I know Senator Senator Carper? Yeah, Senator Carper. I know Senator Carper agrees with me that it's always great to see a Navy man here in front of the committee, and you are now recognized for your opening comments.
Thank you. Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul, distinguished members of the committee, I am honored to appear before you as a nominee to lead the office of the National Cyber Director. I would like to thank President Biden for nominating me and this committee for its continued support of this important position in office. I also want to recognize and thank my family, to include extended family of mentors, classmates, friends, and my church family. Without their support, I would not have had the opportunities that I have been blessed with. My mother served as a career Navy wife and then became an educator. My father, who would have turned 91 today, was a Navy chief and then an educator. They raised their children with love and discipline. My late wife remains an inspiration because of her strength and passion for life. Our daughters and granddaughter are carrying on her legacy in a manner that would make her immensely proud. I have proudly served our nation for over 4 decades in the military and as a civil servant. And although it was not called cyber when I first became interested as a high schooler in Parsons, Kansas, by the time I graduated from the United States Naval Academy, I recognized the importance of what is now known as cyberspace. I worked at the intersection of technology and national security for the next 20 years while serving our nation in uniform as a naval officer. I continued this work in a different capacity, spending another 2 decades as a civil servant and senior leader at both the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency. Since retiring from government service in 2019, I have continued focusing on the challenges our nation faces in cyberspace by supporting organizations that prepare for and respond to evolving cyber threats. During this time, I have seen a need for stronger partnerships and collaboration between the public and private sectors, and if confirmed, I will continue to ensure that collaboration is the North Star at the Office of the National Cyber Director and the guiding principle for the administration's cyber work with all partners, including Congress. The challenges we face in cyber are both broad in scope and dynamic. There's a proliferation of persistent and capable threat actors from nation-states and criminal organizations that regularly target our schools, hospitals, cities, and businesses. Here at home, according to public reports, hundreds of thousands of open jobs that touch on cyber need to be filled. There are also risks to our supply chain and the technologies that underpin our digital ecosystem, spanning from the need to update legacy systems to the challenge of securely designing the products of the future. Although the cyber risks are pervasive, the President's National Cybersecurity Strategy and its implementation plan are the roadmaps we need to tackle them. The solutions cannot be about any one entity or even just the federal government. Taking action in the face of these challenges requires working together to improve our cybersecurity posture. I am prepared to take on these challenges. If confirmed, I will work with interagency colleagues, the private sector, Congress, and many others to help foster a digital ecosystem that is inherently more defensible, resilient, and aligned with our values. I have observed how the Office of the National Cyber Director has risen to address these obstacles. The inaugural National Cyber Director did yeoman's work crafting and standing up the office with the support of the President and this committee. The current acting National Cyber Director has carried on that legacy. Just in the past year, the office has spearheaded the President's National Cybersecurity Strategy, a public implementation plan for the strategy, and the National Cyber Workforce and Education Strategy. It produced joint guidance with the Office of Management and Budget for federal agency cybersecurity spending priorities, and it has hosted leaders from numerous industries at the White House seeking substantive feedback on core cybersecurity issues and driving subsequent public-private collaboration. Collaboration with many stakeholders is what motivates me to return to public service just as eagerly as I did when a Navy recruiter visited my high school many, many years ago. Today, cyber is often front-page news, and I remain humbled and honored by the opportunity to again serve our great nation. If confirmed, I will bring the full complement of my experience, expertise, and ethos to the position of the National Cyber Director. Thank you for considering my nomination, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Coker. I know we'll turn over and recognize Senator Carper, who will introduce one of our nominees.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Before I do that, I do want to say to Harry Coker, I'm a retired Navy captain, the last Vietnam veteran serving in the U.S. So I was 17 years old when I raised my hand and took an oath to defend our country and Constitution. And it's an honor to especially to welcome you as one Navy veteran to another. You notice not a lot of members are here right now. There's a debate that's unfolding on the floor today. We're going to try to there's like 300 men and women who've been nominated, senior ranking officers in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and we've not been allowed to have a confirmation vote. We're going to try to get 3 of them done today. One of them would be the first woman ever to be nominated to serve as the Chief of Naval Operations. So this is a big day. It's a big day because you're here, but it's a big day in the Senate. We're going to do our job. So congratulations on your nomination, Sven. Congratulations to you as well. And to Jeff, I see Jeff Razmovic has some support right behind him. It looks like his mom and dad are here. And what are their names?
Senator, my parents are Victor and Evie Razmovic.
And the lady in the green dress, is that your daughter?
That's my wife, Melanie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say our thanks to your mom and dad for raising you. Actually, all your parents. My dad was a chief petty officer in World War II as well. But our thanks to them for raising you and Suzanne, your parents, with the idea that we have an obligation to give back and to serve. And we're delighted to be here with you today. I'm going to say a few words about Jeff Razmovic. I might be mistaken on this, Mr. Chairman, but I think it's been like a decade. I think it may have been a decade since we had a Senate-confirmed chief financial officer in the Department of Homeland Security. I think that's awful. An agency with a budget the size of this one, it's almost a $100 billion budget. And that's unacceptable. I'm hopeful we can take a big step forward toward filling that vacancy and a couple of others. Jeff knows DHS better than just about anybody I know. He has served in various leadership roles for, I think, over a decade. Is that right? For over a decade, including as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, as well as acting Deputy Chief of Staff and as a counselor to the Deputy Secretary as well, all that. He's also worked for FEMA, a Federal Emergency Management Agency, and for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. You must be about 100 years old. That's a lot of service. Your dedication to our country has driven his successes, leading him overseas to oversee thousands of employees and drive the department's mission to support the functions of human capital, security, procurement, information technology, and a whole lot more. Jeff is exceptionally well qualified to serve as the department's next CFO, and I know his long-held institutional knowledge and his extensive experience in budget management will serve our country well. And again, welcome to his parents. Thanks to them for his wife for her willingness to serve him, and we look forward to hearing from you today. I'm going to slip out and go to the floor and try to get a couple of people confirmed to serve in other roles, but I'll be back later for the vote. Thank you all. Congratulations. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Mr. Razmovic, you're recognized for your opening comments.
Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul, and distinguished members of the committee. It is an honor to appear before you today as the President's nominee to serve as the Department of Homeland Security's Chief Financial Officer. I am grateful to the President for nominating me, and to Secretary Mayorkas, and to Acting Deputy Secretary Canigallo for their leadership and their support. Thank you, Senator Carper, for your kind introduction. That means more to me than you know. It means a great deal to my family as well. Thank you. I'm also grateful to all of you for consideration of my nomination. I would not be here today without the love, support, and inspiration of my wife, Melanie, who is sitting behind me. She is my best friend, my partner, and my home. She is also a career public servant at the U.S. Agency for International Development, and she carries an incredibly heavy load for our family, despite having a demanding and meaningful job herself. My parents, Victor and Evie Resmovic, are also here with me today. They are both immigrants and naturalized citizens. They are both the children of Holocaust survivors, and they are both former public servants. And my work ethic, my integrity, my resolve, and my commitment to public service are a direct result of having won the parent lottery. My two sons, Ben and Corey, are too young to understand what today's hearing is about, but I hope that they watch it one day when they are older. I hope that it can help them to see that public service is hard work, but it is work that matters a great deal. It is work that is worth doing despite its challenges. And I hope they see that there is joy and pride in committing your life's work to something that is greater than yourself. Public service is all I have done, and it is all I have ever aspired to do. It is why I came to Capitol Hill right out of college. It is why I served as a law clerk on this committee's permanent subcommittee on investigations while I was in law school. It is why I have spent the last 13 years at the Department of Homeland Security. And over those years of service, I have not only learned about the essential work of the Department of Homeland Security, but I have learned what makes it great, and that is the career civil servants who fulfill the department's critical missions. I know firsthand how important the DHS Office of the Chief Financial Officer is in enabling the department's mission because I have worked alongside its personnel for years. Among other things, they develop and execute budgets to deliver on the department's missions. They modernize our financial systems to ensure that we are expending taxpayer resources appropriately and responsibly. They engage with the Government Accountability Office, the Office of Inspector General, and Congress as partners in strengthening the department. They oversee financial assistance programs to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and they measure the effectiveness of our work to ensure that DHS is always improving and always delivering. In my previous role as the department's Deputy Chief of Staff, and in my current role as the department's Associate Deputy Undersecretary for Management, I have had the privilege of working closely with this dedicated team of public servants. It would be the greatest honor of my professional life to lead them and to support and empower the work that they do each day to help execute the DHS mission for the American people. During my tenure at DHS, I have served under secretaries and deputy secretaries of both political parties. I have served at the department's headquarters and in 2 of its operational components. I have worked alongside career officials and political appointees. And what I have found universally is that there is no group of people better suited to protect this nation from the threats of today and to prepare for the threats of tomorrow than the personnel of the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you again for considering my nomination, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Suzanne Summerlin has a wide range of experience in federal labor law. She has advocated for civilian employees at more than 30 agencies, most recently in her capacity as Deputy General Counsel and Deputy Executive Director for the Federal Education Association. Prior to her legal career, Ms. Summerlin was an award-winning journalist, producer, and documentarian. She has received both her undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Florida and is proud to be 100% public school educated. Ms. Summerlin, you're now recognized for your opening comments.
Thank you and good morning. Chairman Peters and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as nominee for the position of General Counsel at the Federal Labor Relations Authority. I am deeply grateful to the trust that President Biden has placed in me through this nomination. Further, I'd like to thank the members of this committee and their staffers for reviewing my qualifications for this position, the staff at the FLRA for their support during this process, and my colleagues throughout the federal sector labor bar for their confidence in me to fulfill the role of General Counsel at the FLRA. It is a profound honor to be considered for this critical role. Through my expertise, I understand the demands of the General Counsel require not only legal expertise, but also a deep understanding of the unique challenges and responsibilities of managing labor relations in the federal sector. If confirmed, I will uphold the statute's mission to promote fair, effective, and efficient relationships between agencies, their employees, and their unions. I myself have been in the working world since I was about 6 years old. And whether it was a job on a film set as a background actor, producing live television, or working as an attorney, I have learned that disputes at work are inevitable. Oliver Wendell Holmes referred to labor struggles as one of the eternal struggles, conflicts of which life is made. And fortunately for us, in the case of the federal sector, Congress has devised a way to manage that eternal conflict. It created the statute. Since 1978, the statute has established the rule book by which agencies, their employees, and their unions resolve labor disputes. I have witnessed firsthand that when players follow the rule book, follow the statute, everybody benefits. And I do mean everyone. When agencies and unions follow the rules, it promotes the efficiency of the federal service. And to me, what that means is that taxpayer dollars, agency resources, and the time and talent of dedicated career civil servants can be focused on the mission of their individual agencies and not tied up in labor disputes. If confirmed as general counsel, I will dedicate myself to applying the law judiciously, balancing the interests of employees, unions, and management in a fair and impartial manner. I will work tirelessly to ensure that the FLRA continues to promote labor management harmony and effective government operations. In conclusion, I am honored to be nominated to serve as general counsel at the FLRA and to work closely with its dedicated staff. If confirmed, I pledge to approach this role with integrity, transparency, and an unwavering dedication to the principles of fairness and justice under the statute. I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you for that. There are 3 questions that the committee asks of every nominee, and I'm going to ask each of you to respond briefly with just a yes or no. Mr. Coker, I'll have you go first, and we'll just go down the desk here. First, is there anything you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated?
No, sir.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Second, do you know of anything, personal or otherwise, that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office for which you have been nominated?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, Mr. Chairman.
And lastly, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of the Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Well, thank you. Mr. Coker, the Office of the National Cyber Director, ONCD, as we call it here, we love acronyms, as you know. We come from the Navy, you know that well. Was established in the 2020 NDAA, making it certainly a relatively new organization. So my question for you is, what experiences do you have in growing and maturing organizations, and if confirmed, how would you go about assessing the existing ONCD structure and working to mature the office?
Yes, sir. First off, thanks to this committee for supporting the stand-up of the office. The office, from my perspective, has demonstrated its value. Although standing up organizations, which I do have experience with, at the initial phase is a lot of process, a lot of discussion, a bit of chaos, and dynamic atmospherics. That's natural. Personally, I've had the opportunity to stand up organizations at the small unit level, specifically when I was at sea. The ship got a new and unique capability, and I was tasked with standing up the organization that had to develop the processes to operate and maintain that system. It included collaboration across a number of naval platforms. Later in my DoD career, I was on the team that stood up, a plank owner, if you will, the Department of Defense Space Architect. Another effort that was very collaborative, but we stood it up from the ground floor. In my civil service career, I've had the pleasure of standing up a number of organizations, one of which was a collaborative effort between the Department of Defense and the intelligence community just after 9/11. Valuable lessons learned there. My private sector experience includes work with startups, literally with startups, that are understanding the lay of the land and developing their business cases as they seek funds to address those business or use cases. And from the government perspective, in partnership with those startups, we saw the value in dialogue between public and private partnerships. So, and then the last example I'll leave you all with is during the latter part of my civil service career, I was on a small team of seniors that helped to restructure the organizational construct of a major organization. It was plenty of lessons learned there, one of which was it's difficult to over-communicate with the need for change and how everyone is involved in effecting that change.
You, on your 13 years of service to the department, under both Republican and Democratic administrations, your experience holding several leadership roles in 2 DHS components and at the department's headquarters, I think gives you some unique perspective on DHS management as well as DHS operations. But for the purposes of better understanding of that experience, if you could tell us how your experience has prepared you to take on this particular role as Chief Financial Officer and the steps that you have taken to ready yourself to take on a much bigger role would be helpful for members of this committee to hear.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. As you said, I've served the department for 13 years, both at headquarters and in operational component roles. During my time as the department's Deputy Chief of Staff, I also led the department's budget development and budget execution, served as the primary senior level interlocutor between the department and the Office of Management and Budget. I've also critically been able to, and had the good fortune to, engage with our frontline workforce over the course of my many years in the department and have been able to understand what their needs are. And if confirmed as the CFO, what will drive me is delivering for our workforce. I've had the good fortune of seeing them out in the field, especially our frontline personnel. I understand what their needs are, large and small. I have good relationships with the department's component heads, both operational as well as headquarters, and I look forward, if confirmed, to being able to leverage those relationships in furtherance of delivering for our department's personnel.
Extended period without a confirmed general counsel has significantly disrupted FLRA's ability to adjudicate charges of unfair labor practices all across the government enterprise. At one point, it caused a backlog of almost 500 complaints, which I think we should all agree is unacceptable. My question for you is, if confirmed, how will you approach the challenges created by such a prolonged vacancy? And if you could give this committee some idea of your initial priorities, if confirmed, that would be helpful.
Yes, so the initial priorities, we were fortunate enough, the FLRA was fortunate enough to have an outstanding acting general counsel over the course of a couple of years who did yeoman's work in clearing out the majority of the backlog. In fact, I believe did clear out the backlog in its entirety until she was she had to step down from the position, I think, at the beginning of August. So it's my understanding a small backlog has developed, 50 to 60 cases right now. I think that is going to be the top priority of my term as general counsel, is to get in there and clear the backlog. And I am so fortunate to be able to rely on the expertise and on the staff who have just gone through this process to clear the 500 case backlog that was there. So 50 probably seems quite doable compared to that. So that will be the first thing that we knock out of the park, absolutely.
Well, thank you. Senator Carper, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Resmovec, you, I think you're going to, as the youngest, you'll be leading this department, which is, actually, I was literally president at the creation for the Department of Homeland Security. And we have seen the transformation of 22 agencies into a single department to serve our country. And it's been not always easy to watch. There's just struggles, some good times, some bad, some really tough challenges that we face around the world. We see them even today. But while the department has made major strides and major progress toward improving management functions, we need to strengthen the financial management functions of the department, and that remains on GAO's high-risk list, General Accountability Office. And I would just ask, what would be your approach to working with GAO, led by Jean Didero, to ensure that these recommendations are fulfilled from GAO? Can you share with us any specific priorities you have with regard to strengthening the department's financial management functions? Please, go ahead.
Senator, thank you for the question. GAO is a partner in strengthening the department, And the more that we treat them as a partner, the better we are and the stronger we are as a department. And I'm not just saying that because my mom, who's sitting behind me, served at GAO for 30 years. I'm
Did she
saying
really?
it. True story. I'm saying it because we've seen the results.
Was she Gene Didero's predecessor?
We've seen the results. When the department was created, it was immediately placed on the GAO high-risk list in its entirety. The scope of the high-risk list area was implementing the Department of Homeland Security. And over the course of significant engagement and partnership with the GAO, what we've seen over the past several years is a significant narrowing of the scope of the department's GAO high-risk list area, from implementing the Department of Homeland Security to strengthening DHS management functions to, in the most recent GAO high-risk list, strengthening DHS IT and financial management functions. We've got to get off the GAO high-risk list. If confirmed as the department's CFO, among my greatest priorities will be moving forward with financial systems modernization. Right now, we have approximately 40% of the department's spending occurring on modern integrated financial systems, and of course, we have to get to 100%. If confirmed, my priority would be to ensure that that work stays on time, on budget, and I will look for every opportunity to accelerate that work.
You'd be pleased to know you don't have eyes in the back of your head, but if talk about your mom's experience at General Accountability Office, I can see what she's thinking. That's my son. That's pretty encouraging. All right, Mr. Coker, I'm going to pick on you for a minute there. When I mentioned my dad was a chief petty officer in the Navy, so was my uncle, my mom's brother, and my grandmother's a Gold Star mother. And but we bleed Navy blue in my family. We probably do in yours too. But it's great to have you here before the committee is nominated to serve as our National Cyber Director. And we thank you again for your distinguished service to our country. More than 8 years ago, a former colleague and friend of ours, someone that Senator Langford knows very well, Tom Coburn, and I worked together to enact legislation that would make it easier for the Department of Homeland Security to hire cybersecurity professionals. Following a lengthy development period, the program has proven, I think by most people's regards or opinions, successful. And DHS has begun hiring under the Cyber Talent Management System. That said, there remains an enduring urgent need to hire more cyber security professionals across the federal government and throughout the private sector. And we must continue to focus on bolstering our cyber workforce to ensure that we're doing all we can to recruit and retain the best and brightest minds out there to improve our nation's cybersecurity. In your testimony, you highlighted the cyber workforce shortage and the risks it poses for our cybersecurity posture. If confirmed as National Cyber Director, how will you lead the charge to strengthen our federal cyber workforce and engage the private sector to ensure recruiting efforts are in line with our cybersecurity goals?
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss what I think is most important, not just professionally, but personally, and that's people. And the workforce education and strategy is all about getting the right people with the proper development to address the hard problems that our nation faces, in this case, in cybersecurity. If confirmed, I would frankly, sir, continue the good work that ONCD has done with its partners. The strategy that we've mentioned tackles this challenge head on. It recognizes that it's a whole of nation challenge. It gets the right involvement with the private sector, but also with another key partner, the state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. And so if confirmed, sir, what I would do is drive to those levels to ensure that they know a few things. And one, it's based on mentoring that I do in Baltimore City with middle school kids. I ask what are their favorite subjects. They span liberal arts, STEM, all of that. Well, when I was growing up, cyber, although it wasn't called cyber, was focused purely on STEM folks, people that had that interest. That's no longer the case, and that has to be messaged. Frankly, that strategy, the workforce education strategy, has a pillar, a foundation, in that we need to increase the cyber skills of all Americans. So that's one, regardless of an interest in STEM. And we need to transform cyber education. And that's why it's important that, that we have such a strong partnership, again, with state and local governments. This is a challenge, again, whole of nation, but it's going to be the state and local governments that have to lead that. ONCD and that strategy has made a point of ensuring that SLTTs are aware of the resources that are available. Again, my recent government experience with the Centers for Academic Excellence is an opportunity to show educational communities how to transform the curriculum by providing guidance. And the last point I'll briefly mention, sir, is that we need to change the way we look at vacancy notices, job questionnaires. In cyber, should not be a requirement for everyone to have a 4-year degree. You can get that cyber education without going through a 4-year college. And so again, we need to deliver that message broadly and deeply. Those are just a few of the steps that I would take if confirmed, sir.
All right, that's good. I would just share with my colleagues and with all of you, we're in session. We go into session here usually Monday afternoons, start voting Monday afternoons and Monday night. We're in session, it's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and we finish up Thursday afternoon. And a lot of us go home, back to our states and to our families. One of the things I do customer calls. I do customer calls every week. We only have 3 counties, 1 million people in Delaware. But I visit businesses large and small, and I ask them, what are your needs and what can we do to help? Almost everybody says we need people to come to work. And one of the greatest needs is in terms of cyber. The cyber area is really tough to do, and we just need to do a better job on the private sector, colleges and universities to prepare that workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Senator Rosen, you're recognized for your questions.
Well, thank you, Chair Peters. I really appreciate you holding this hearing, and thank you for all of you for being here today. I want to move on to critical infrastructure, as we're talking about all of these things, cyber and STEM, because according to a recently released 2024 Department of Homeland Security threat assessment, both foreign and domestic cyber actors, and I'm going to quote here, continue to seek opportunistic access to critical infrastructure sector targets for disruptive and destructive attacks, end quote. So now more than ever, the role of the Office of the National Cyber Director is key in maintaining the defense of our critical infrastructure sectors. So, Mr. Coker, given the fact that the vast majority of our critical infrastructure is owned or controlled oftentimes by private entities, it's essential that the federal government closely collaborate with the private sector. So how do you view the Office of the National Cyber Director's role in facilitating these relationships with the private sector in regards to critical infrastructure?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for that question. It's a vital one. And my perspective has been for years, and I would be able to follow up on it more hands-on if confirmed, and that national security, especially cybersecurity, requires partnerships across the public sector and the private sector. Although I've been in situations where that partnership wasn't a true partnership, where it was more one way. Give me what you got, tell me what you know, and I'll see you later. That will not be effective in cybersecurity. I'm delighted that from my optic, the federal government generally and ONCD in particular recognizes the necessity of partnership with the private sector. I've had experiences where the private sector has actually brought threat information to the government. Another way to look at the private sector with regards to cybersecurity is, in many cases, they are on the front line. Right. And I can use an analogy. It's not perfect, but it's close enough. They're on the front line fighting the threats every day. You could say that's a combatant command, if you will. And in this case, the supporting command would be ONCD and others in the federal government, but ensuring that the private sector knows there is a true partnership and that their knowledge, their capabilities, and their risks are appreciated and supported. If confirmed, I would communicate that regularly. I would demonstrate the value of the partnership, and one of those areas is in information sharing. Again, we cannot succeed without the strength of that partnership.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the Secure by Design products? Because the Secure by Design products, they're designed to protect against malicious cyber actors, of course, gaining access to devices, data, all the connected infrastructure. So how would you ensure that some of these agencies are using and procuring this Secure by Design software so that the federal government can engage better on building on that topic?
That it's Secure by Design, it really does flow from one of the major shifts that's incorporated in the National Cybersecurity Strategy. The two shifts being rebalance responsibility, defending cyberspace to those that are more capable. But the second major shift that gets directly to your point is to realign the incentives to a long-term investment. And that's where it comes into place. We need to ensure that it's not just a focus, it's not at all a focus on first to market.
Right.
It needs to be secure to market. And the government can incentivize Secure by Design, secure to market. And so that's the way that needs to be demonstrated as we shift that balance to realign the incentives towards that.
I like that, secure to market. And you set me up perfect for the next question, because the initiatives that are outlined with the goals set by the National Cybersecurity Strategy, all of these things are in there. It's so important. So how would you, if you're confirmed, ensure that these initiatives that are outlined, the things you're talking about, that you get the necessary support and funding?
Again, I may have set you up for that question, but you
didn't know it was my next question. It was perfect.
For something that again, I've been just delighted as I've been doing my reading and preparation, and the strategy that we referred to is a document that is the result of more than 400 sessions with folks, not just across the government, not just across the federal government, but state, local, tribal, and territorial, but our private sector partners. They are key. So it's having that plan that is not just the president's, or not just ONCD's, not just the federal government. It's the United States cybersecurity strategy. And I get the sense that the private sector partners and actually other federal and state partners believe it is their plan, our plan together. So ONCD has done a masterful job on that. Also key to that strategy is the implementation plan that comes along with it. 69 initiatives that flow from that strategy that go to every issue that I am aware of related to defending our cybersecurity strategy. And not just has those initiatives, but I think it's 18 or so different departments or agencies that are tasked and held responsible, held accountable for that implementation. And lastly, on that point, there are milestones associated with that. As a former program manager in the government, I know it's key to have cost, schedule, and performance. Have those metrics. They have to be there. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so ONCD, to their credit and to the partnership's credit, has done a masterful job in pulling that strategy and implementation plan together.
Well, thank you. I see my time's just about up, but as a former computer programmer, I'll submit this for the record. I introduced the Civilian Cybersecurity Reserve Act to allow people working in the private sector to serve like they do in other areas of reserve or guard type duty based on that, because there's a lot of technical expertise. People want to serve, and sometimes it's years to get that experience. I'll submit that for the record, and we can talk about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Langford, you're recognized for your questions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you to all of you for going through the process. It's a lengthy, long process to be able to go through, so I appreciate you and your families and what you're doing on this. Mr. Cook, thank you for the time. I got a chance to be able to pick your brain at length earlier this week in my office. Thanks for making yourself available just to be able to walk through this, obviously many things that are exceptionally important to the entire nation that you'll be tasked with working on. So I very much appreciate that for your family and for you and your lengthy service. Thank you for that kind of engagement to be able to. Mr. Chairman, I do want to be able to ask some questions, though, specifically, and be able to walk through a couple of things. FLRA's regulations provide no interested person outside this agency shall make or knowingly cause to be made any prohibited ex parte communication to any authority member who is or who may be reasonably be expected to be involved in the decisional process of the proceeding. I know you know that well. As a counsel, obviously, or potential counsel, you're aware of that. Any thoughts on that as far as just in part of the FLA regulation?
I mean, I feel like that's a very common provision that you would see in most statutes of this type, certainly within the labor sector. It is vital and important to keep a wall between the folks who are asking for resolution before the authority and for the folks that are providing that resolution in the form of the 3 members of the Federal Labor Relations Authority.
Which we all agree is exceptionally important on that. You're also aware that Chairman DeBester from FLRA, he had an Inspector General investigation based on ex parte communications that he was accused to be able to have, and that he then withdrew his nomination. He was going through the process, was preparing to be able to come before this committee when the IG investigation came out, and there were multiple emails that came out on that. He withdrew his request to be able to be in this, which the president accepted. The interesting thing to me on that was he withdrew based on those communications, but when we go through the emails, you were often the other person on the other side of those emails, back and forth. So in 2019 and 2020, the Chairman DeBester reached out to you several times in phone calls and in emails. October 23rd, 2019, Chairman DeBester emailed you specifically if you might have a minute to chat sometime this week, wanted to update a couple of FLRA matters of interest. On November 13th of that same year, Chairman DeBester emailed you to ask if you had a second to chat sometime this week for an update. In June of 2020, Mr. DeBester reached out to officials on an email, which you were included on, requesting a phone call to provide a quick update. You responded to that with some suggested times to be able to set up a call. After the call, one of your colleagues replied to the email chain, "Thanks for keeping us informed. We're very grateful." These matters were apparently related to things that were at FLRA. Do you remember those calls or those emails back and forth with him?
So thank you for your question, and I understand that this has been, I've responded to these questions throughout this process. I think it's important to know that I have never seen, nor was I ever contacted by the Department of Treasury Office of Inspector General in regard to these allegations or this report. I have never had inappropriate or unethical communications with Mr. DeBester. In my duties at NFE, the National Federation of Federal Employees, I was tasked with communicating legal developments to the Federal Workers Alliance. We call it the FWA. The FWA is an organization of unions that represent workers in the federal sector. The president of NFE, Randy Irwin, is also the co-chair of FWA, and as such, he sometimes tasked me to do FWA work. So I would speak to representatives of several agencies involved in the federal, worker labor issues, including the OPM and the FLRA. Mr. DeBester was often the contact I was given to call to set up times for him to come in and brief the FWA on new developments at the FLRA. This is similar to updates given to us by OPM at the time, and in keeping with what I understood to be a tradition of FLRA members coming to speak to the FWA and to also other organizations. I've seen Mr. DeBester and other members of the FLRA speak at conferences for labor management relations together. I don't fully recall this. Like I said, I was never contacted in the course of this investigation. We're talking about phone calls that happened 4 and 5 years ago. I was never contacted or, given a chance to refresh my memory or recollection of these. However, I can say with certainty that Mr. DeBester was always prefacing everything that he was saying, giving disclaimers at all times to his ethical duties, because he had the ethical duties as the member of the FLRA. Right. And so he was constantly telling us, I can only discuss public information, I can only tell you what's available out there. If anybody, and I don't necessarily recall this ever happening, but I feel like if anybody was to ask a question of him that crossed that line, he would have absolutely put up a...
Well, I understand, but obviously he's, based on the IG investigation, he's withdrawn from this. So that's, we're not talking about Mr. DeBester at this point on this. It's trying to be able to figure this out. I do know we contacted the Inspector General, and we just asked the question based on the email chains and such, and we said, okay, because is this the is there any concern here? And the Inspector General's response to us was, the email chains that were between you and Mr. DeBester is an example of the kind of message that contributed to our conclusion that the former FLRA chairman engaged in a pattern of activity that created the appearance of impropriety. So again, that's not about you, that's about him, but it was
Right.
specifically about the back and forth that he was having
I
with you
really,
at that time.
I wish somebody would have given me a call so I could have talked to them about it. These were ministerial phone calls in nature. They were phone calls that were setting up times for him to come in and brief. You know, we're lawyers. We like it to be spoon-fed for us sometimes. So, we like to have people come in and give us presentations on what's going on with the case law. It's a pretty normal thing. And so if I had been asked by the Inspector General, I would have been able to give that information.
Mr. Chairman, we'll just walk through it from there. Obviously, there's the unique challenge that we have that the administration, quite frankly, has put us in front of. That obviously you weren't a party to in the middle of all this in the conversation the administration is going to make. But we have an individual that the Inspector General obviously did an investigation, came back and said, hey, there's the appearance of impropriety here of actually sharing information through a pretty lengthy investigation. The challenge that the administration has put in front of us is the other side of that communication now is sitting in front of us as the next person to be nominated. So it does create a unique challenge that we have as a committee that we do need to be able to talk about.
Very good. Thank you. Senator Hassan, you're recognized for your questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to you and the ranking member for having this hearing. Thank you to our witnesses here, our nominees, for your willingness to serve. Thank your families, too, because service is a family endeavor, and we really, really appreciate it. Mr. Coker, I want to start with a question for you, and it's really following up a little bit on an area that Senator Rosen started to ask you about. Earlier this week, this committee heard from FBI Director Christopher Wray that the FBI helped a children's hospital thwart a cyber attack sponsored by the Iranian government. That target of that attack was Boston Children's Hospital, a hospital that provides critical care for families across New England, the country, and frankly around the world. As National Cyber Director, you'd be responsible for implementing the National Cyber Strategy. If confirmed, what will your office do to help agencies and stakeholders implement the strategy in ways that will enhance cybersecurity specifically for our healthcare system?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for the question. And that really does get to one of the key shifts that's advocated for in the National Cybersecurity Strategy. Rebalancing the responsibility for defending the cyberspace to those whom are more capable. Hospitals, as we all know, have critical functions in healthcare. They also have privileged information about individuals, and then they have, frankly, life and death type of information and systems. It's imperative that they be protected, but that major shift would take some of that responsibility, in this case, away from hospitals and shift it up to those that are more capable. For example, our partners across the federal government have threat information, specific threat information that they would share to hospital and other entities if it's credible and timely. Our partners across the federal cyberspace also have capabilities that are available to entities, in this case, hospitals, to help build and test their cybersecurity systems. Part of ONCD's responsibilities, as I see it, is to make sure that those that are less capable are more aware of the threats and capabilities that they can take advantage of.
Thank you for that. And I know that the healthcare community would look forward to continuing this work with partners like you and the agency.
As would I, ma'am.
Ms. Summerlin, I have a question for you. Obviously, federal employees work every day in service to our country, and the unions that represent them are critical partners in ensuring that agencies can attract and retain a talented federal workforce. If confirmed, how will you foster productive partnerships between unions and federal agencies to ensure that the federal government can attract and retain top talent?
Thank you for your question, Senator. And I think this is something that's very close to my heart because, in my experience working in federal sector, seeing the labor sausage getting made up close. And as an American taxpayer, right, I become concerned when I see labor disputes drag on for years. I get concerned when I see bad relationships between agencies and their employees and their unions, because what the statute contemplates and what the Office of General Counsel can do is foster positive relationships. And I think that there's a little bit of a joke. It's the Federal Labor Relations Authority, not the Federal Labor, Enforcement Authority. We are here to build relationships. And so that's what I think, first and foremost, is the most important thing is, and the way to do that, I think one of the best ways to do that from the Office of General Counsel's standpoint is to move through these cases as effectively and efficiently as possible. Because when these cases drag on for years, unfortunately, we haven't had a confirmed general counsel for a number of years. And so there were cases that came down that had major, huge amounts of interest in delay, all this money that was spent on delay, that as an American taxpayer, I don't like to see that happen. And as somebody who's concerned about federal labor management relations, I definitely don't like to see that happen. So what we want to focus on first and foremost is building these relationships, and we can do that through things that are not necessarily prosecuting ULPs, but part of that. And then when we do have to prosecute a ULP, we need to do it effectively, efficiently, and as quickly as possible.
Thank you for that. Mr. Razmovic, in May, I held an emerging threats subcommittee hearing on the national security threats posed by aging technology infrastructure within the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. The 3 DHS chief information officers who testified at the hearing stressed the need for financial resources to support IT modernization. A strong working relationship between the CFO and CIO, the Chief Information Officer, is critical for curtailing wasteful spending on aging technology and prioritizing investments in modern, more efficient, and effective systems. If confirmed, how will you partner with the Chief Information Officer of DHS to manage investments in IT modernization in a fiscally responsible way, including reducing the agency's reliance on legacy IT?
Senator, thank you for that question. I know our Chief Information Officer extremely well. I work with him very closely. The department has approximately an $8 billion IT budget, and as you well know, a lot of legacy systems. Yeah. The Chief Information Officer did recently put out an IT strategic plan that I think will be helpful here in identifying and prioritizing what are the right projects to move forward with in the near term. If I were confirmed, I would be focused on a few things. One, I would be laser focused on financial systems modernization, making sure that it stays on time, on budget. That is certainly under the remit of the Office of the CFO. Right now, we have approximately 40% of our department spending occurring on those modern systems, and we need to get to 100%. Second, I would want to make sure that we are incorporating the right modernization projects through our regular budget cycles. Would work closely with the CAO on that. And number three, when it comes to issues that arise in between budget cycles, making sure that we have the tools and resources that you have helped to make available to us to include the Technology Modernization Fund and the Non-Recurring Expense Fund.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I thank you, Mr. Chair. I will submit a question for the record from Mr. Coker about preparing for a post-quantum world and what we do as our adversaries develop better and better quantum technology, but I'll submit that for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Hassan. Senator Hall, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees. Thanks for being here. Mr. Coker, let me start with you. Are you familiar with the case Missouri versus Biden from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals?
I'm vaguely familiar, sir, from what I've read in the open press.
Well, let me refresh your memory. This is the case in which first the federal district court, then the federal court of appeals, held that the White House and assorted other various federal agencies violated the First Amendment of the United States, illegal actions, unconstitutional actions, by coercing and colluding with the biggest social media corporations in the world to suppress and censor protected speech. Let me just read you a few passages. Officials from the White House began communicating with social media companies, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, in early 2021. From the outset, that came with requests to take down flagged content. In one email, a White House official told a platform to take down a post ASAP and instructed it to keep an eye out for tweets that fall in the same genre so that they could be removed. In another email, an official told a platform to remove an account immediately and said he could not stress the degree to which this needs to be resolved immediately. The court goes on to find, these are findings, by the way, not allegations, findings. Those requests for removal were met. The court goes on. The White House did not only flag content, they started monitoring the platform's moderation activities too, and they often asked for and received frequent updates to the platform's moderation policies. They not only continued the platforms to take down content the officials flagged and provided requested data to the White House, they also changed their moderation policies expressly in accordance with the White House's wishes. Bottom line here, the court found that the White House successfully pressured and coerced, once again, the biggest corporations in the world to censor Americans. And here's how the court summarized it. They said it was a coordinated campaign of unprecedented magnitude, orchestrated by federal officials that jeopardized a fundamental aspect of American life. That's pretty strong language. This is pretty bad stuff. Do you think that this is wrong, Mr. Coker? Do you think that the White House meeting with social media corporations and pressuring them to censor protected speech by Americans is wrong?
Sir, and with regards to ONCD, we do not have a role related to that. We're focused on the digital infrastructure and the digital ecosystem. And that's where ONCD is today, and if confirmed, I presume that's the roadmap that ONCD would continue to follow.
You wouldn't see it as any part of your remit to meet with social media corporations?
I would meet with whatever entity, if confirmed, that could help build and maintain a more defensible digital infrastructure and a more resilient digital infrastructure.
You would be against any efforts to use your office or any other office you have put input in the White House, if you were to be confirmed here, to censor or manipulate or otherwise engage in unconstitutional activities?
I am a proponent, a strong proponent of First and Fourth Amendment free speech and privacy. I do not see any role in ONCD in that area. But again, if I could speak personally, censorship is not an area that I personally believe in. I'm an advocate for constitutionally protected speech.
Good. I ask you because cybersecurity is often cited, and you can see it in this decision, is often cited as a reason to censor. I mean, this is part of the rationale that the White House and the FBI and DHS all used, according to these federal courts, to go to these big corporations and say, you've got to do what we tell you to do. And the finding of the court was the government basically turned these corporations into an arm of the federal government. I emphasize the biggest corporations on the planet with the most extensive control of speech on the planet, and our government used them, turned them into an arm of itself, and went, in some cases, post by post, and said, take this down, take that down, censor this person. In my home state of Missouri, parents who were trying to circulate a petition about school policy with regard to masks had their posts taken down at the direction of the White House. This isn't in a novel. This happened. And for all I know, is still happening in this country. So I just want to make sure, Mr. Coker, that you're going to be a voice for the First Amendment. And if somebody comes to you and says, you need to go and meet with these social media companies and you need to do this stuff, you need to tell them, take down those posts, I don't like that, we're threatening you, you'll say, no how, no way.
Sir, I took my first oath to the Constitution when I was 17 years old, and I've taken it periodically ever since. There's no stronger advocate for the United States Constitution to include all amendments than I am, sir.
Well, good. Well, you would be a breath of fresh air in that regard in this White House. Let me ask you something else. Am I right in thinking that you have served, maybe you currently serve as a senior advisory group member within ODNI, Office of the Director of National Intelligence?
I've have worked some projects for ODNI.
Okay. Have you been involved in any discussions regarding ODNI's obligation to declassify information about the links between the Wuhan Institute for Virology and the COVID-19 pandemic?
Not at all, sir.
Okay. Do you know what I'm referring to here?
No, sir, I don't.
Well, we passed a law. I say we, I mean this body passed a law. We passed it unanimously out of the Senate. It was passed by the House of Representatives. It was signed by the President. I happen to know something about it because I wrote it. And it requires ODNI, requires, not requests, requires ODNI to declassify. I believe the language that we settled on is any and all information, pretty broad, any and all information related to the origins of COVID-19. ODNI has not complied with that statutory obligation. They had a deadline, they blew right through it. When they finally did give us information, they gave us a 5-page summary. They gave us no actual information, none of the detail required in the statute. They have basically, I know this is a family hearing, Mr. Chairman, they've basically given us the finger, put it that way. I mean, just, too bad, we're not gonna comply. I can't tell you how destructive I think that is, not just to the relationship between the White House and Congress, but to the basic rule of law. The American people have a right to expect the laws will be followed, and also when it comes to something like COVID-19, that their government will be honest with them about what they know. That's what this law requires, what they know. So if you're confirmed, will you commit to us, Mr. Coker, that you will comply with statutes duly enacted that this body, Congress, enacts and writes into law?
Absolutely, sir.
All right, very good, thank you. I'll have some other questions for you all. I'll submit them for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Ossoff, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to you all for your nominations. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Mr. Coker, Georgia is increasingly a hub for technological innovation in the cyber sector, and the Georgia Cyber Center in Augusta is a world-class facility that I'd like to invite you to visit. This institution strengthens not just Georgia, but the nation, and helps to train, develop, and implement technologies and techniques crucial to securing critical infrastructure and to securing the overall U.S. cyber environment. So my question for you is, will you commit to joining me in Augusta, Georgia, at the Cyber Center, should you be confirmed to this post, to meet with key cybersecurity leaders in Georgia and discuss ways that the White House can support our efforts in Georgia?
If confirmed, sir, I'd love to visit Augusta, Georgia, and the Cyber Center with you. I actually have experience there in Augusta. I had the honor of visiting and working with NSA Georgia in Augusta a number of times. I actually know some of the, I have former colleagues who work at the Cyber Center, so it would be, again, my honor to visit Augusta on that topic.
Excellent. And the men and women at NSA Georgia and the U.S. Army Cyber Center for Excellence at Fort Gordon are doing an outstanding job protecting our nation. I'd like to discuss with you cyber threats to the legislative branch. And just as executive branch agencies are a target for foreign intelligence services, adversaries, and hackers, so too is this institution in the U.S. House and legislative branch components. And so what I'd like from you is a commitment that, consistent with the relevant boundaries, separation of powers, that you'll find a way to work with me to make sure that the Senate Sergeant at Arms is maximally empowered to defend U.S. Senate networks. Should you be confirmed, will you sit down with me and have a conversation about whether and how that might be possible?
If confirmed, I'd be delighted to, sir. Information sharing, especially as it applies to situational awareness for cyberspace, it's vital. So I would be delighted to meet with you and whomever you think is appropriate on that topic, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Coker. And as I believe you've testified, and as I have no doubt you agree, having a highly qualified cyber workforce is crucial to U.S. cybersecurity. Both public and private sector entities need highly qualified professionals who are trained in this complex and ever more important area, I wrote legislation called the Cybersecurity Opportunity Act, which passed as part of the CHIPS and Science Act, which established the Dr. David Satcher Cybersecurity Education Program, named after the former Surgeon General of the United States and a proud Georgian, which authorizes NIST to award grants to HBCUs and minority-serving institutions to establish and enhance their cybersecurity education programs. Will you commit, if confirmed, to working with my office to help ensure, consistent with the boundaries, the proper parameters of your obligations at the White House, to ensure that this legislation is effectively implemented?
Although I'm not familiar with the legislation, sir, from what you tell me, it is something that it fits very nicely and appropriately with the cyber workforce education strategy. In particular, trying to close that hundreds of thousands of gaps in cyber-related vacancies by going to underserved communities, places we haven't gone before. Not at all lowering standards, and I come from one of those underserved communities, rural Kansas, where I had not heard of the Naval Academy, but the Naval Academy had the good sense to recruit to places they hadn't recruited to often enough. In this case, it sounds like the act would take the same type of approach to filling these critical gaps.
Well, Mr. Coker, I have good news. It's not merely legislation, it's now law. And I look forward to working with you to implement it. And I would suggest that your schedule permitting, perhaps while you're in Georgia visiting Augusta, we could also pay a visit to the Atlanta University Center and discuss with the HBCU leadership there how they can ensure that their students are empowered to join the cyber workforce. I appreciate all of you for your service to the country and congratulate you on your nominations. And look forward to working with you to ensure that our nation is protected and that our national interests are pursued and advanced. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Ossoff. Senator Blumenthal, you are recognized for your questions.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This week, as you all know, President Biden issued a pretty sweeping order on artificial intelligence, and the issue of security is central to that order, covering issues like malicious deep fakes, cybersecurity of infrastructure, protections for AI models. Senator Hawley and I are working on comprehensive legislation on AI, and cybersecurity is at the core of our work. Our focus not only on the steps that the executive order proposes, but also issues like the use of AI by foreign adversaries. This field is moving very, very quickly, as you well know, and yet it has barely received any mention in the National Cybersecurity Strategy that was published this March. So let me ask you, looking at how quickly this field is moving, looking out at how important it is, what issues would be your focus, Mr. Coker, as National Cyber Director, and what should we be doing to address those risks?
With regards to AI, sir?
Correct.
Yeah. AI, like many emerging technologies, has pros and cons, and I can just speak to some of the potential benefits to artificial intelligence as they apply to cybersecurity. There is an awful lot of data that is not just available, but that is essential to cybersecurity. So much so that big data analytics need artificial intelligence capability to process through those mounds of data and turn it into actionable intelligence in a timely manner. That's a direct area in which artificial intelligence can and must support cybersecurity. But like with many technologies and emerging capabilities, there are other sides that we need to be concerned about with artificial intelligence. And although I haven't made it through the recent executive order just yet, it's over 100 pages, from what I've seen at the top level, there's recognition of those potential concerns, and that needs to be a focus area along with the potential benefits of artificial intelligence.
What are the key assignments that you have under the executive order, or that you would have if confirmed?
The My understanding is that the Office of the National Cyber Director would have a seat, or does have a seat actually, on the White House Artificial Intelligence Council. So ONCD will sit on that council, sir.
In terms of the 2024 presidential election, talk to us perhaps a little bit about what keeps you up at night when you think about it in terms of cybersecurity.
With regards to elections, they're run by state and local governments. And so my concern is that state and local governments get all the support that they need to be able to execute their respective elections in a safe, and accurate, and confident way. Again, the role that ONCD and frankly, the federal government by and large would have, it would be a supporting role to the state and local, tribal and territorial governments with regards to how they run their elections. If confirmed from an ONCD perspective, I would ensure that those SLTTs are aware of the resources that are available to them. Specifically, there are partners that could take a look at how defensible and resilient their election infrastructure is. There are other partners that could provide timely and credible threat information. But again, it's the state and local, tribal and territorial governments that have the lead with the federal government in support.
Do you have in your office, in the office of the National Cyber Director, an outreach function to state and local governments?
I haven't had the benefit of a meeting with the entire office and getting that type of insight, sir, but from my reading of the strategy, both the National Cybersecurity Strategy and the National Cyber Workforce and Education Strategy, ONCD has a strong outreach, not just to those SLTTs, but across the private sector as well. So without having sat through an org chart, I'm very confident that that type of outreach is in place at ONCD, sir.
I think states are going to need the benefit of the expertise and insight that your office and you can bring to bear. So I think that's going to be a very important function that you can perform, and hopefully you have the resources to do it. I don't know how big your staff is in that office.
Absolutely agree, sir. Again, ONCD has been referred to as a coach. There are other players on the field. In the case of election security, those players on the field really are the state, local, tribal, and territorial governments that ONCD, amongst other partners, needs to support with the expertise and other resources to, again, effect solid elections, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Well, I'd like to thank our witnesses, our nominees again for joining us here today and for your willingness to serve in these very important positions. The nominees have filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires, and without objection, this information will be made part of the hearing record with the exception of the financial data, which is on file and available for public inspection in the committee offices. The hearing record will remain open until 12 p.m. tomorrow, November 3rd, for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is now adjourned.